Hi everyone. Thanks for coming. We wanted to welcome you to our first annual SuperBot Conference. Artie. So I'm Arte Merritt, one of the co-founders and the CEO of Dashbot. We have our whole team here today. Jesse and Dennis, my co-founders, Regina, Justina, Luke, Ryan, Ido, the whole works. So as many of you know, we're a bot analytics platform. And what got us really excited about this space is conversation, the conversational interfaces. So we're strong believers that conversation really is the future, the natural evolution of human-computer interaction. When we first started, we often heard from investors saying, you know, what's the top bot out there? They try to draw analogies to mobile, as in what's the top app or the killer app, trying to argue that that's the reason why people bought iPhones. But we'd actually argue it was the device itself. And in this case, devices like Google Home and Alexa, those really are the iPhone moments. When you remember all the videos of 2-year-old kids when they're swiping the iPhone and the iPad, they already knew how to interact with it. You see the same thing happening with these types of devices. Jesse has 2 little kids. They already know how to interact with the Alexa. Say, Alexa, play the Happy Dance. Alexa, play Star Wars. This really is the future. So whether it's voice-based like Google Home and Alexa, or more text-based like Facebook, Slack, Kik, and other platforms, that is the natural evolution of computer interaction. So what got us really excited is the data itself. The data with bots is so much richer and more actionable than web and mobile. It's unstructured data. Instead of just clicking links and buttons, users are sending in images and audio and video, but more importantly, they're sending in their own words, their own voice, and they're saying, this is what I want from a bot, and then this is what I think of the bot after, and sometimes that's not too pleasant. But it leads to some pretty interesting actions you can take. You can do live person takeover, you can do push notifications, A/B testing, all on the fly based on the data. So we've processed over 3 billion messages. Just to give you a frame of reference, we started about this time in May of last year. We launched with the first customer. It took us about 10 months to reach the first billion messages. We processed the second billion in about 6 weeks. That's the growth rate here. And so we're seeing some pretty interesting data that we wanted to share with you, some of the insights that we're seeing. So one of the things we often ask people is, what do you think the most common message users send into bots? Do you have any idea what the most common message is? Yeah, hi and hello, right? So because it is conversation, that's the way folks start. About 65% of bots on average get the message hi. The interesting thing is not all bots support that message still. Last month we had a meetup where one of the members of the audience asked if we would evaluate their bot, and the first thing I did is type in hi, and it responded, sorry, I don't know what you mean. Related to it are messages like help and stop. So about 32% of bots get the message help. And this is still a relatively new medium, so people might not know how to interact with your bot. So handling support for something like help can actually be helpful. And then stop is another good one. Especially if your bot sends a lot of broadcast messages, adding support for stop can be the difference between a retained user and a blocked one. So one of our customers, they send a lot of sports scores out there, and they found that when the users' teams were losing, they would get upset and they would block the bot. So this company was paying to acquire users, and then next thing you know, they're blocking them, and they have to pay to reacquire them again. So they added effectively a stop function, a mute function, that allowed users to mute the scores, and then they retain those users. Another thing that we found that was pretty interesting is people like to treat the bots as if they're people. If you create a personality for your bot, engagement often goes up. About 19% of the bots receive the question, you know, what's your name? Another 10%, people are trying to figure out, are you a bot or not? Are you human? Are you a bot? 6% or so, people are asking, are you a boy or a girl, right? They're trying to personify these bots. It leads to some other interesting things. When we first started, we often heard this. People would say, the most interesting question that was being asked to their bot is, you know, tell me a joke, like, or a surprise message being sent to the bot. So when we first started and looked at this, it was about 12% of bots were getting it. It's slowly dropping. People are asking more interesting questions now. It's maybe about 9% now. But as I mentioned, it's unstructured data. It's not just the text and the words that people are sending. The users do send in images. In this case, these are the top stickers that were sent in Facebook over the past couple months. And these aren't just images. They're actually conveying emotions and feelings. The thumbs up means something. The happy faces mean something. About 52% of Facebook bots get this, and over 44% of Kick bots get these kind of messages sent to them. So it's another thing to add support for because it is conveying people's feelings. And it turns out people like cats, too, a decent amount of cat emoticons. What got a little bit more interesting, though, is to actually look at the images themselves and not really look at them ourselves, but have machine learning look at them. So we ran the images from January and December through Amazon's image recognition service to see what users really were sending in. And this service will tag the images with labels or the different confidence level. So we just looked at the higher confidence level images to see what people are sending. Do you know what the most common image people send to bots? Yeah, it's selfies, right? So a person, human, people, portrait, these kind of things all map to selfies. What got a little bit more interesting is we looked at Facebook versus Kick, and you often hear Kick skews to teenagers in the US or folks in Southeast Asia, and so we started to see on the Kick side things like anime and comics and cartoons coming up a bit more. Facebook allows you to separate male versus female, so you want to see, is there any difference in gender? And with male, you start to see more images of cars, motorcycles, vehicles. Women, it still skews very heavily to selfies, although this one was popping up, was kind of interesting, electronics. And we're trying to figure out, why are women taking photos of electronics? Do you guys have an idea why that is? It turns out when you do the selfie in the mirror captures the phone, and so the phone is tagged as electronics. So the crazy thing is the not safe for work images. It turns out people do send naked selfies into bots. Luckily, it's a low percentage, roughly 2% of the images and 1% or so of users. 90% male doing this. The crazy thing is if the average image, a normal image, is sent to a bot once. One of these naked selfies, on average, is sent in 5 times. And in one case, over that 2-month period, one guy sent the same naked selfie 266 times. So there's some weird hurdle you get over that you feel it's okay to do this, that you're just going to keep doing it. And this is to bots, by the way. It's not you're not sending to people. On that note, the male versus female, back around Valentine's Day, we decided to look at the data to see if there's any difference with male versus female, the usage of bots. And we found, at least on our platform, about 63% of the users were male, 28% female, and then the others, might not be defined or didn't have anything set. With male, though, with men, they have about 50% more sessions than women. But then the messages per session, women have about 12% more messages per session than men. And we also were able to look at how many bots people were looking at or using, how often they use them. And it turns out about 14% of men and 11% of women use multiple bots. So it's kind of interesting to see. One of the questions that comes up often is, what's better? Should you have more buttons or allow the free-form conversation in these interfaces? So we decided to take a look at it to see what effect it had on engagement. And in this case, we're talking about sessions per user for engagement. So it turns out over the past couple of months, the average percentage of buttons and quick replies, this is in Facebook, quick replies are basically another form of button. The average combination of those is roughly 50% right now. If you go more than one standard deviation over that, it turns out engagement drops off pretty significantly as sessions per user. In fact, it's about half as much as if you were one standard deviation below the average. Now, this is across all bots, so we want to see, are some use cases different, or in some cases it's better than others? So it turns out in cases like social, reference, and fitness, these ones, allowing more unstructured data leads to higher engagement as a factor of sessions per user. In fact, social, it's about 11 times greater if you're a standard deviation below that average of buttons in quick replies. Reference ones, it's about 6.5 times greater. In fitness, health and fitness, about 4 times greater. So there are cases where having more buttons actually works better. The most obvious one is games. So we see games skew to there's basically 2 different camps. There's word-based games, and then there's button-based games. And the button-based games just 3 times greater engagement than the word-based ones. these other things like shopping and entertainment. In this case, entertainment is more watching videos and movies. It's about 1.5 times greater if you're above average use of buttons and quick replies in your bots. These are examples of where a good mixture works out pretty well. So travel, sports, insurance. So the bots that have a good combination of buttons and quick replies, as well as allowing the free-form unstructured text, their engagement is much higher than if you're on either extreme. So hopefully you can tell we really love bots. We're super bullish on this space, and we wanted to see what do users think of bots. So we looked at how often do people say "I love you" to the bot, right? And it's about 18% of Facebook bots receive this message. "I love you, Machow," "I love you, Giant," those kind of things. Slack, it's about 22%. At the same time, though, about 11% of Facebook bots and about 12% of Slack bots also get the "I hate you" messages, and roughly that same number, 9.5% and 10.5% of each of these get both. So, I love you and I hate you. So these are opportunities also, if you're looking at your data, to see how you can improve your bot. What are people getting upset at that led to that message? Overall, the sentiment is positive. People seem to be having good experiences with the bots and good feelings with them, both in Facebook and in Slack. So what does this all mean? Like, why is this important? Are bots really doing good? Is this an interesting space? Is it really taking off? So we took a look at the 30-day retention metrics across a couple different platforms, and it turns out it's on par with mobile. The chatbots are doing fairly well. So Localytics published 30-day retention for mobile apps. It turns out it's about 36%, and you can see here Facebook 33%, Slack 41%, Kik 28%. They're on par with mobile. We also wanted to look a little bit deeper into different use cases and examples where things might be different. So these are some of the more popular based on 30-day retention. So games, social, fitness, local, and shopping. Now, sometimes you hear, if you go to an event, maybe an event like this, what are the things that are social faux pas? What should you not talk about? Like, don't talk about sex, religion, politics. So we want to see, what about in chat? Is it okay to chat about these things? And you can see politics have pretty low, any of these political bots have pretty low retention rates, but the dating and religion ones have really high 30-day retention. The only thing is 60 and 90-day, it completely drops off. So perhaps the users of those bots found whatever they're really looking for. So on the political note here, just out of random curiosity, just want to check how often are people talking about different politicians in these bots? So we just did a quick look here, and you can see, at least in Facebook, Trump's talked about in about almost 12% of bots, Obama 7%. When you go over to Slack, talked about quite a bit more, 21% versus about 14%. But the message volume is much higher. So the messages about Trump are about 5 times greater than ones about Obama, and almost 8 times greater than ones about Clinton. So we're hoping someone might actually tweet about this. Someone that likes to tweet might be interested in tweeting this. So lastly, we appreciate all you guys coming out for this event. We have a great lineup of speakers here. So some of the top platforms out there, from Google, Slack, Kik, Facebook, IBM Watson, people from those companies. We have a lot of the brands here from NBC, Condé Nast, Fandango, eBay, a bunch of the top bot building platforms out here, Polstring, Chatfuel, Reply, Spectrum, Gupshop, Howdy, really good guys here. And then some really interesting bots, too. You have the founders of Giant, Machow, Swell. Some interesting ones coming up. There's Blue Kangaroo, is kind of interesting to check out. And then a lot of experts. You have the folks from Chatbots Magazine, Chatbots Life, Bloomberg, VentureBeat, and even O'Reilly. So it's a good group of folks. And we just wanted to thank our sponsors before we get started. So we couldn't have done this without the sponsorship of these folks here. So Samsung Next, they're one of our investors as well as a sponsor. If anyone is interested in getting a company off the ground, starting a company, you should definitely check these guys out. They're really supportive. They have an office space you get to use. They help do intros. They're a really great group of guys to work with, and I'm happy to talk to you more about them and the Samsung folks here you can meet later. VSC, these guys are helping all sorts of startups get publicity, helping us and folks here from that team, VJ and his team. Wilson Sonsini, that's our law firm. Joachim is our lawyer. He's a rock star in the space. People know him. He's definitely a legend here. And then last but not least is VentureBeat. I mean, this is one of the top media companies covering bots right now. If you're following the bot space, they have a whole channel around this on VentureBeat, and they have their own events coming up, like MobileBeat, which is definitely something worthwhile checking out. So without further ado, we're going to kick off the event today, and thank you all for coming, and hope you enjoy the event. Thanks. Oh, and don't forget to if you tweet SuperBot 2017, we have giveaways. Some people might see them. There's Dashbot socks that are pretty cool. You can get a pair of those. But yeah, hope you guys have fun. Thanks.